reached the point where I didn't really feel limited with PHP. I could pretty much do anything I wanted to. But you move to Meteor and you just realize, wow, suddenly it's become really, really easy to make very, very powerful apps. You need very little code, and you can do, using very short amounts of code, very, very powerful apps. And we're going to touch on that a bit later. I really, I will speak about myself momentarily, but just two short things that are going to be quite relevant for this presentation. The one is that this is the first time I'm speaking to a joint Meteor and Famous meetup. Usually I speak to one or the other, and I get to, do quite a comprehensive introduction to the other framework. For the purpose of tonight, I'm going to be assuming that both groups have at least a fundamental understanding of both frameworks. But if not, then I'm happy to take clarifications on each slide. David can do some MCM magic and get these questions to me. For general questions and related questions, try to save for the end. But any questions on a particular slide, I'll take at the time.
All right. Maybe a visual problem here. We don't see you anymore.
No, but that's because it's sharing its slide. That's all.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, no, you can keep the slide up. But can you tell us exactly why did you decide to mix Meteor and Famous? Like, why not just use like Meteor only or like Famous as a standalone library, because that's what they were meant to do?
Okay, sure. Sorry, it's going to be a bit tough switching back from the decks all the time. Please just bear with me. Yeah. So, we have these two things, Meteor and Famous. And I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, Zoltan Ola from Percolate Studios who said they're actually made for each other. And there's a very good reason why he said this. Because each bring their own advantages and they fit well, they fit incredibly well together. On the one hand, you've got Meteor, which is a full stack isomorphic framework. If you're not familiar with the term isomorphic, it just means that we've got JavaScript running on both the client side and the server side with a very similar or sometimes even identical API. So, for those coming from a traditional app background, you no longer have to write separate code on the client and the server to process the same data or do, similar work. And Meteor is also the fastest way to build, a so-called modern app. So we're talking about apps like, Facebook or Gmail, but you don't need a team of 50 engineers to do it. And even more importantly than that, Meteor have official Cordova support. And that's a really big deal. For the famous guys in the crowd, you probably remember hearing about a famous rapper, a famous mobile rapper for quite a while. I don't know, I might be wrong, but I think we kind of stopped hearing about that. I don't know if there's any developments on that. With Meteor, you can build you can build a Cordova app. I think it's just 2 command lines, and your app is already compiled into a native version, ready to go on the App Store, ready to preview in your emulator or on your device, and that's a pleasure. And pairing very well with that, you have on the other side Famous, which is a front-end rendering framework, which brings a kind of native quality user experience in JavaScript, and solves what I like to call the final HTML5 everywhere obstacle. And what that obstacle is, it's kind of, forgive the term, a developer's wet dream, to develop one code base that runs everywhere. All the big companies, if you want to do things right, you've got to have a team of people working on a mobile app, on a desktop app, mobile website, I should say, an Android app, an iPhone app. And, if you're a startup, it's very difficult to actually, employ 200 people to do this for you. You might only have 1 or 2 developers. So, Meteor lets you build these really good apps, live type of apps. But we've never until recently had the kind of, native quality user experience. When I say that, we've probably all been in a situation where, you're on the App Store You download an app, and you're like, this isn't even an app. It's like a web page inside an app container, and you almost feel a bit insulted that you thought you were getting an app and you got a website. So yeah, even though CSS animations have come a long way, you've never kind of had that native feel in an app, which Famous kind of offers. And we'll see some examples in a moment, and we can look at some eye candy at the very end if people are interested. So you have these two well-funded companies founded by successful entrepreneurs that solve complementary problems. And what it does, it actually frees us, the developers, to focus on our apps instead of wasting time solving, Roger, fundamental inadequacies of old technologies. The last thing you want to do is spend like a week solving some problem that every other good app developer has had to solve. You should be solving the problems specific to your app. So, in my opinion, I really believe there's no better, simpler, faster, or funner way to build a single code-based app that works on all platforms without compromise. Yeah, back to you.
All right. So can you speak a bit about your integration exactly? So when did you start, and who's working with you, or are you working alone? Like, is this something that probably can rely on?
Sure.
Where can you find your?
Okay, so before I get to that, just one last slide. I should have done it already. The dev setup is very similar, or as quick, I should say, for Vanilla Famous and Meteor. It's exactly the same number of lines of code. Meteor also has a Windows installer. I don't know what if any Windows developers in the audience, but I believe Node is quite unpleasant on Windows usually. And Meteor have solved all those problems quite elegantly. And yeah, sorry, just to explain, there are a lot of ways you can get Famous in Meteor, but the two recommended ways are either the MGN Famous package, which includes the entire Famous library as one global in the package, or the Rakes for Mono package. And what that does is it's actually pretty awesome. You write your code on the assumption that you've got the whole library there, and Pomona kind of goes through your code, works out exactly which pieces of Famous you're using, and only bundles that in your production minified code. And not only for Famous, for actually any library. That's pretty awesome. So yeah, I mean, what we're looking at now is, as I said, how to get Meteor and Famous working together, but no integration yet. So this is kind of the point where I got involved in the story. I was looking at people doing Meteor and Famous projects. Obviously, this was very early days as the beta had just come out, but it made me a little bit uncomfortable because I spoke about earlier and how, or maybe I didn't, but Meteor really brought a lot of fun back into the coding for me. Suddenly, I could have an idea over a weekend, and in one weekend I could do like a pretty decent app because of the power Meteor gave me. And suddenly, there's Famous is in the picture, and I'm seeing pages and pages of JavaScript. It's almost, one of the things that I really noticed, is that everything's in JavaScript, which is good, I suppose, for a framework, but practically it's not so convenient. You can imagine, someone says to you, okay, make me a website. And you're like, yeah, no problem. Well, var p equals document.create element p.html equals hi, welcome to our website. Document dot body dot append child p. It'll just take you forever to write something like that. So that was one of the problems I wanted to solve. And the other was just to, we can go to the next page. The other is to kind of do Famous the Meteor way. Meteor gives you all these amazing shortcuts and very easy ways of integrating stuff. And suddenly we were seeing again, people writing huge amounts of JavaScript to do things that should be quite quick and simple in Meteor. And that's kind of what I wanted to bring back. So a bit about the package. Yeah, since about November last year, we're doing about 1,000 downloads a month, which is really good considering, this is also a side project for me in my spare time. As I mentioned, you get to do, build your render tree with markup, and we'll see that in a moment. The one clarification I would like to make is that Famous uses primarily a low-level wrapper around Famous. There's been a lot of confusion about this in the past. People get onto the project and they say, okay, well, you've only wrapped like 5 Famous components. You'll never be able to maintain this. It isn't really that useful. But that's not really what the package is about. Sorry?
Yeah, no, go ahead. So I see that you have the library on GitHub. Do you have any contributors that works on with you, or are you like maintaining the whole thing by yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, you can see the contributors here. It's mostly me. The other really big contributor is Pem, Pierre Marchandé from Paris. Those people involved in the project have probably gotten help from him on the repo issues. He's helped a lot with the theming of the website, contributed quite a few plugins, which we'll get to. And then McBain. So McBain is the author of MGN Famous, of that famous library. And I think his biggest contribution to the project has been our testing infrastructure, which was really a big milestone for the project. And also at the bottom here, we've got Splendido, Luca Mussi from Italy, and he's done an amazing user account famous wrapper. So if you want to, use Meteor's automatic login templates, using his wrapper, you suddenly get all the nice famous animations when people log in and get those boxes.
Cool. So can you show us how to start with Famous View, basically, or how do we get to use it?
Yeah, sure. So picking up from the original Meteor and Famous dev environment, it's basically just this one line, Meteor add Gadi Cohen Famous views. There are a few optional extras which are popular with our users, the Jade library and the CoffeeScript library. And on the quick start over here, you can find quite easily some boilerplate code, starting off a little bit simpler than what we'll cover today. You can also git clone the quick start repo. There's a quick start on Meteor pad and a new pad on FU Lab, which you'll see momentarily as well. So yeah, just to see what it looks like. Vanilla Famous on the left, Famous views on the right. Famous, Vanilla Famous all in JavaScript. And in Famous views, as I mentioned, we're now working in markup. So it's pretty obvious what's going on here. You're establishing a new Famous context. In that Famous context, you've got a surface. The properties become attributes. These attributes, of course, for those who know Meteor, support reactive helpers, which we'll see in a moment. Inside the template, of course, you've got regular HTML, indented, syntax highlighted, no need to worry about inverted commas and pluses. And obviously, besides HTML, you can also put in sub-templates and other Meteor components in here. And, I mentioned before Jade. So, yeah, I don't know how many people know Jade. I only came across it recently. A lot of my users were posting, their template structure in Jade, which was a little bit irritating in the beginning because I didn't use Jade. But quite quickly, you just kind of see the advantages. It's very, very clear what's going on. So if we look at, the same template in Jade, we're getting rid of all the punctuation and just using, indentation to explain our structure. And this is really, sorry, yeah?
Oh, I was just like amazed by 7 lines of code instead of 13 on the space bar. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so I mean, what's especially impressive is if you look at, let's say, Stack Overflow posts about Famous, everyone's got to describe their render tree. And the way they do that is usually with ASCII using indentation and pluses. And now suddenly, in as little code as it would take to just describe to someone what your render tree looks like, you've actually done the whole thing. And we're going to see that in action in the next few slides as well. So, yeah, is everyone following so far? I don't know if you can shout out.
Everything's all right?
Yeah.
All right. So Canada's all right.
Okay, great. So carrying on, yeah, it's similar Meteor kind of stuff. We've got template inclusion using the greater than operator. It's slightly different in famous views, but very similar. We're just going, include the surface from the my surface template, and then it's coming from here. And just like in regular Meteor, the minute that we've got a separate template, we can do things specific to that template. We can have lifecycle callbacks, events, helpers, and that's what we're doing here. We've got an on-rendered callback. I put in a bit of extra code here just to make things super clear. It doesn't always have to be this long, but especially for the famous people in Meteor on an unrendered callback, this is a template instance. And what we usually use in famous views is what we call the FU object. And I know that sounds kind of funny because it's almost like, FU, bro, FU. Sounds kind of bad. But after you've heard it once, you get used to it. So to get the FU from a template instance, we use this FU from method. And it's pretty flexible. You can throw it a template instance. You can throw it a Blaze view. You can even throw it an HTML element from inside a surface, and it'll always bring back that FU, which you can manipulate. Now, one thing I didn't mention earlier is we provide a few shortcuts. So, if you're making a renderable, let's say the surface, which needs a modifier, but it's the only thing using that modifier, you can just stick the modifier straight in here and access it straight away from fu.modifier. So, exactly like on the left, all we're doing here is we're calling that modifier and we're calling it set transform method with some parameters here, which for those of you that know famous is just going to move this thing 100 pixels to the right, 300 pixels down over 1 second using an in-out back curve. And don't worry, we'll see some, I'm just covering some basics and we're going to see some action very soon. One more slightly advanced example. Here we've got a scroll view. We're going famous each items, and that's coming from this reactive helper over here. Don't worry, we promise we're going to go over all of this a lot for those that don't know Meteor that well. And then, what's really happening is here. So inside a scroll view, we've got a surface coming from a template that's going to be rendered separately each time for everything coming out of this items data context. And that could be, from a live database, as we'll see in a moment, or anything. Then we're doing, again, an on-rendered callback. This time we're doing something a tiny bit more complicated. In the very beginning, we're moving it off the screen, and then we're queuing it up. Okay, queue obviously here has a pseudo function, but we're saying, 100 seconds apart, move it back to the original place. And that pretty much looks like this. So, it's a very simple animation, but it does make your pages, a tiny bit more lively, which is quite nice. And we also provide a famous events method, which isn't really necessary, but does let you build your events on surfaces and views a little bit more, in a little more natural way for Meteor users. So, yeah, if everyone's ready, any questions until now?
Anybody has a question or your question? Any question? I think it's okay.
Okay, so now we get to go to some of the fun stuff where we can actually see some things in action. What you're seeing here is something called the FU Lab. It's not public yet, but it does work, and there are links to it in the slideshow presentation. And what it is, it's, you can see it's inspired by Famous University, but it lets you do this kind of live code editing using yeah. So is everyone okay if we use Jade?
Fine. Yes.
Good. So let's start off. I'm a surface. What we can do now is we can say, okay, let's put in a sequential layout over here. Let's indent the surface. We can give it a size of indefinite width and a height of 50. And of course, what we can do now is we can actually paste these over and over again and get a few surfaces in succession. Nothing special yet, but what we can do now is we can say, okay, instead of writing all these surfaces by hand, what if we were to get them out of a database? So we're going to make a database of surfaces now, which might seem like a lot of work, but obviously it's only really for demonstration purposes. In real life, of course, we could be getting user records or products or anything out of a database. But for example's sake, let's make a new Meteor collection, a client-side only collection called surfaces. We'll make 30 of them. So we're just building this collection now, nothing too exciting. We'll say for each surface, we can give it a name of surface I+1, and we can give it a style with a background. I mean, the syntax is very familiar to famous people. It's used quite extensively. HSL is a 360-degree color wheel with 100%, 150%. And lastly, let's make this available to the body, the main body. So yeah, we're just going to say surfaces. This is a reactive helper. It's just going to return a very simple query. Surfaces are find. Obviously, this, those that don't know Famous, I mean, we've got a client-side database. We can do my MongoDB queries just like we were on the server with basic publish, subscribe system. Okay, so now we've got all these things over here. So let's make a few changes to our template code. Let's go back to just one surface over here. And we're going to firstly do a famous each surfaces. So now, let's just see what's wrong with our first surface. That should be an S over here. So now I've got 30 surfaces. Nothing too exciting yet. However, now, because we're getting it from the database, we can actually get our styling from the database. So if we look at that now, we've got this nice, almost color wheel thing going on. And we can keep improving this. We can say, okay, let's get the name from the database as well. This is all coming straight from the database. We're using surfaces, but it could be, again, user records or products or anything like that. And now we can say, okay, let's make this a scroll view. Now we have these little bouncy things going on. And, we can just kind of keep playing. We can say, let's make this a flex grid. We're going to get rid of the sizing from here. And we can just say item size 150 by 150. So now, now we've got this kind of thing going on. And what's kind of cool about this is, we have these nice transition animations where as you resize things.
Nice. That is a lot, guys.
In fact, it was hard, you can see really just, it'll work out what fits and just make it happen. So, yeah, I mean, what's very cool about that is you can see, look, I mean, we've done 6 lines of templating and 14 lines of JavaScript. In fact, in CoffeeScript, if I save this, okay, well, 12 lines of CoffeeScript. But, it really is very simple. And I think, well, I'll show a few more examples. In fact, what I'd like, I'm going to come back to this page. But for now, anyone who's got a laptop, either in the room or on the net, if you can go to this address over here, we can see how what I just demonstrated actually works with a more tangible example. I don't know if there are any laptops in the room. But yeah, as you'll see in the following code, again, this is it's very similar to what we just did, and we've got these reactive computations happening. We're sorting by either name or date, and again, it all I mean, I didn't have to do this. This is all done by the packages for you, which is very cool. So I don't know. We'll see if anyone comes back to that. But just to look at the code, the structure is a little bit more complicated here, but nothing excessively so. You've got a surface, and sorry, that's going to keep happening. And here's that surface.
You can the website address again, the address just to make sure that.
Yeah, here's the address over here. It's Meetup. Yeah, thanks, Charles and Matt. And then again, we can sort by either date or date is obviously when they joined, or name, and you still have this nice animation going. You can keep joining while I'm going through the code. This template area over here, I mean, that's just this little box over here, and that's just being re-rendered every time with a new data, with a different profile picture and a different name. And it's obviously there's no CSS. If any other laptops, I'll leave this page open for 1 sec so you can see the addition as well. Because especially if I'm doing it by name, you'll see it kind of slots in the middle there. Don't know if we have any other laptops. But yeah, I mean, again, God, I'll come back to that page. So this is what 27 lines of templating code and 30 lines of JavaScript. I'll just go through it quickly. Even a CoffeeScript, it's 23 lines. So yeah, I mean, more for those who know Meteor a little bit. We've got a reactive session variable sort by that's going to create our Mongo query for those that know Mongo. And then this line is basically returning the options is based on the session variable, so that's reactive, and the cursor is reactive, and that's live. So if anyone new is coming in, working with Meteor, you don't have to write any new code. If new people are added to the database, either through the app or directly to the database, no extra code is required in your app to make it render and make stuff happen. You don't say, okay, well, check for new records. If there's a new record, work out where to insert it. See if this variable is true and do it this way, otherwise that way. You avoid all that code completely. You just declaratively tell Meteor what you want to happen, and it happens very efficiently. So yeah, I mean, that little app is 30 lines of JavaScript, 27 lines of templating. And so the thing is, David originally asked me to focus less on code, less on Meteor code, and more on the possibilities of using Meteor and Famous together. And originally I was trying to think of some incredibly complex examples to really drive the point home. But the truth is, you can't really separate these two things. The big advantage is the code. I mean, there's nothing that you can't do in Famous without Meteor. You can do all the same things. It's just going to take you much longer. You'll never in raw Famous be able to get like a little app like this going in 55 lines of code. And I mean, these aren't even like, I'm not even squeezing everything in those lines. Some of those, the templates are, got like a one line break or 2 line breaks on lines of their own. It's still like a very clear, concise structure. And yeah, I mean, that's really, I've still got a few other things that I want to see, but that really is like the main issue that, you can do, well, going back to, let's say, traditional frameworks, if you've been working the scene for a number of years, you probably get to the stage where, you can do whatever you want. Whatever the client would ask you, you can do. However, there are things that the client doesn't ask you, and you think to yourself, well, it would be very nice if that's animated when new data came in, and you're like, well, I know exactly what's involved in that, and I can do it, but I really, I can't be bothered. I don't really care how much the client is paying me at this point. I just want to get the project finished. I'm not enjoying this anymore. And, when you can do these small little things, when suddenly the barrier, the mental barrier to adding fun UI to your site is gone. You're suddenly making, very fun, alive, and modern apps, getting all those advantages. So, yeah, there are just a few other things I'd like to show from the site. Yeah, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but let's say, we spoke about reactivity, and it just eases a few things in Famous. Obviously, I'm giving quite rudiment, almost silly demos here. But let's say we've got a grid layout, and the dimensions are coming from a reactive helper. So, now not only is the size changing, but the number of columns can depend on the size. And maybe that's not the best example because anything's going to be refreshed in Famous when the screen size changes. But if you're depending on 5 different variables, it's crazy to work in the old way where anytime any of those variables change, you recalculate absolutely everything. Whereas instead, you could have Meteor tracking these dependencies for you and only recalculating, what needs to be recalculated. You can have something like this. This is your template code. You're just saying size is get size, skew x is session, skew x, skew y, whatever. And you can build something like this very, very quickly. We've also got people like the timber menu layout. And if you look at the site, I'm on the Famous Views website now. In all the demos we give, we give sample code. So back, the timber menu, this is working on a reactive variable and whether or not the menu is open. Everything happens based on that. If I look at the code, it's just, session set menu open false. And when they click, you're setting session set menu open to you're toggling it. And everything works around that. And the code is quite clear. And also, everything is kind of based on what templates are open at the time, and Meteor handles all that stuff for you. There's some, animation, but
Yeah,
sorry.
no, like that, but we have like 2 minutes left, because I think we already like within most of our time. I'm not mistaken. It's okay.
Sorry, I
So
can't.
10 more minutes. Like we'll take question. We'll probably will start on the question after, but you have 10 more minutes.
Okay. Yeah, and then I'm just trying to think what else is exciting here. So just to show you what some of our users done, there's this thing called Poodler, which someone actually wrote. I mean, this is over a year ago with a very early version of Famous Views. But it just, it shows you what you can do throwing this kind of stuff together. So this is a very simple kind of thing. We've got the kind of typical app bouncy thing going in, swiping these around. You've got your menu happening like this. You've got these little bouncy page indicators at the bottom, and things are kind of more live when things open up. Stuff happens, and that's very cool. So I mean, this the guy said he wrote it in 10 hours, including learning Famous. So that I thought was very impressive. He said it would take him an hour today, and you can build really cool stuff quite easily. We've got a whole lot of plugins, which I'm not going to go through now, but they're all on the site. All kinds of things where people have really eased, what you have to do to get various community Famous packages into your code. One of the more exciting ones of which is this flex scroll view by Hein Rutgers. Probably he's done the most impressive community Famous components. So, again, this is all coming from a collection. In fact, the code that you need to implement this demo is pretty much just this line over here, where obviously any of the values can be reactive. So, we can remove things and it all animates like the cool way we expect. We can even, even the layout itself is reactive. So we can change that into a wheel layout. We can change the direction. We can flick things around. And it's very cool and very easy. So I've got a few more people here. You can see the sorts and everything. And yeah, so I mean, I've touched on all of this already, but it really is amazing, firstly, and Famous in general, to just describe what you want your page to look like and then not worry about updates ever. Meteor handles all of that for you, and with Famous Views, it can as easily instantiate Famous components. And mixing the kind of Meteor live factor with Famous animations is really cool. It makes your app feel more alive. It makes people more engaged with your app, and it requires surprisingly little time to implement, especially in the case of, I've shown a lot of ready-made components. Obviously, if you wanted to, you could also make your own, an entirely new user experience. If you wanted to do like a revolutionary new interface like Tinder or something like that, you have all the tools to do it. So yeah, there are a few other things on the slide which people can ask me about if they want. Maybe I'll come back to you. Otherwise, yeah, I'm ready for questions.
All right. So thank you, Gadi. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, technical questions, philosophical questions for Gadi.
If it takes 2 weeks to learn Meteor, which should take everybody, how long does it take to learn things?
Sorry, Dave, you might have to repeat the questions because I'm struggling to get from the...
It takes some of us like 2 weeks to learn about Meteor. How long does it take us to learn about Famous?
Okay. I'm just going to go back to that. So what Famous have done, which is really cool, is they've done this thing called Famous University. And this really is the best way to learn about Famous, because what they do is they kind of interactively, in like a live coding way, take you through from the very basic components to the advanced components. And that's, how long? I mean, you could do that, I don't know, I mean, a few days. It depends on how motivated you are to go through all the lectures. Each, it says in 15 minutes. If you push yourself, you could probably do some of these in 5 minutes. And then you get those cool concepts. In the FU lab, we're trying to do something similar, but obviously we're not as far as Famous University. But we're trying to combine those lessons into lessons that cover the Famous stuff and our stuff. And also on this page, we've got, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this is all in alpha, but it does kind of work if you refresh from time to time. We've even got like a little intro to Meteor over here, where you can learn about the client-side aspects of Meteor as well, which is quite useful.
Thank you, Gadi. A trick question for you, because Gadi, I didn't like. I think I prepared you for that, but what's the browser support for a web app made with Meteor and Famous?
Cool. So Meteor, I think, supports. Sorry, let me just get myself back here. Meteor, if I'm not mistaken, supports IE8 and up. Famous Internet Explorer, if I'm not mistaken, does not support Internet Explorer, or maybe definitely not earlier versions. There are a few issues. You can find it actually if you search for IE on our, even on our repo. We linked to a few different issues there. In terms of mobile, on mobile, so yeah, on iOS it's very good. On Android, if you're talking about a Cordova application, the kind of crossover point is Android KitKat. So in Android KitKat, they've started using Chrome as the default, WebKit web view inside all of Android. So you can have quite a small Cordova app on KitKat, and you'll get all the power that you're expecting. But if you want to target earlier versions, you need to use Intel Crosswalk, which will include the Blink engine in your app itself. That means your app will be about 85 megs and up, but that's only for versions of Android before KitKat, 4.4.
Any other question?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Why is it named Famous? why is the name?
Yeah, that I can't answer. You're gonna have to ask the Famous guys. Yeah, I've actually got no idea.
Just make a short story. Make a long story short. I think it's because they were aiming before doing the framework. They were aiming to do like an application in HTML5, and then they completely reversed course and said like, okay, instead of working on the application itself, let's work on the framework for the application, which like kept the name of the earlier project that we wanted to go with. So I kind of guess that's the answer, but I can always send you an email. I'm gonna ask you to come like directly like when I go to the San Francisco. I had another question for you. I think I still have time. can you, because when I was looking for famous, I saw in the Meteor like plugin repo, like there's another thing that is called Famo for Meteor. Is it the same, different, or totally unrelated? Like, what's the situation between famous view and Famo?
Okay, so yeah, so famous views is the only integration. But then to get, famous views assumes that you already have famous inside of Meteor. And to get the actual famous library with no integration into Meteor, the two common ways are to use either the MGN famous package or the Rags for Mono package. And the differences between them is that MGN famous includes all of famous in the minified bundle, and Rags for Mono will see which parts of famous you use transparently and only bundle those parts of famous for you.
All right, so I have one last question. This one is a personal one for you. How many apps have you developed so far with your library? Or how to talk on the actual project that you worked on?
Yeah. So the startup that I'm working on, unfortunately, I can't go into any details now. But yeah, we're going to be using Famous Views to do our main app. That's actually one of the reasons I managed to give it so much attention, because I kept working on our app and saying, oh well, this needs like a better foundation. Let me rather fix this up in Famous Views first, and then I can use it. So yeah, it's getting fairly serious attention for me, but obviously it is a almost like a side project, and yeah, it would be from time to time people in the community have really been incredibly helpful figuring stuff out for us, and it would be great to get some more contributors on board. But yeah, or commercial-wise, our app is pretty far from being released. We've got a lot of our own logic to do, not related to Famous. And yeah, I think in the open source world there are some basic things out there. I mean, even the slideshow that you saw is using Famous Views, and the FU slide deck plugin from PEM. I mean, that's a Meteor app using ironrouter and everything. But yeah, it is. I mean, I don't want to misrepresent anything. It's still, Famous itself is still in the very early days, and that's kind of covered on the pros and cons page, which you can find later, or which I'm happy to go into. And yeah, obviously we're doing an integration of also a beta. So I guess ours is like a pre-alpha. But for pre-alpha, we've had some very good feedback. And as you've seen already, a lot of stuff plays together really nicely and works pretty well.
So thank you again, Gadi, because I saw like on your clock on the computer, it was 2 o'clock in the morning over there. So thank you for your kind time.
So before we end,
yes. I'll do that. So I'll send you a link for the Meteor meetup. I think so that way you'll be able to send us all the links. Well, and I'll put the links as well because I think I got the links. Definitely. Yeah, I have the links too, so I'll be able to send it to you guys. Thank you, Gadi. I think I'll let you go to sleep at 2 a.m. in the morning, 2:20. All right, guys, a round of applause for.
Sorry, just some final words from me. The draft of the slide deck is up here. Obviously, all these links are available in the slide deck. If you've got any questions after this, I'll check in the meetup groups, or you can just open a GitHub issue with a question on the repo. And yeah, finally, David, a big thanks to you for coordinating the meetup. David and I have had quite a few emails flying across over the last few months. So yeah, thanks for making it happen. Very happy to chat to you guys. Looking forward to collaborating in the future.
All right, thank you, Gadi.
Okay, thanks guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
You too.
Cheers.